the whole world needs to get it right. We need to think about is how do we collaborate on a global level? It's not enough that the US gets it right. With AI, is different because depending on what things happen, it could be an existential kind of threat.
So you would consider yourself a strong optimist of technology and innovation?
I am. And AI has been pushing me every day to balance my thoughts and opinions on how much of an optimist I need to be versus how conservative do I need to be. Do you need to continue being this optimist, or do you need a dose of realism as well?
Do you think we'll get to the point where we don't need our bodies to exist?
Our souls, our memories will live on. I come at it from that perspective. In this future world, there will be certainly less diseases and be more conscious about how to take care of our own body. The word that nobody likes, regulation. The difference is that AI, unlike any other technology that's existed before, in safety and responsibility, comes in and sort of gets amalgamated together, then there's going to be problems.
It feels sometimes that no one is in charge of the process that's unraveling, and maybe it is by design. In fact, if you look at the process of evolution, I think since day one, no one was really in charge.
The strongest will win and the weaker ones will disappear.
What do you think there will be left for humans to do? Welcome, Alejandro. Thank you for coming on the show. Really excited for our conversation. Why don't you give listeners a quick intro of who you are and what you do in the world? What's your superpower that you bring out into the world?
Sure. Yeah. Happy to do that. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.
Again, my name is Alejandro Mainetto, and originally from Peru, but grew up in New York City since I was 15 years old.
Yeah.
And now I've been here the last 15 years in South Florida.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a technology executive. I say I'm a technology executive during the day, and during the night, I'm an investor.
Okay.
So I've been investing for the last 15 years.
Okay.
Today, I essentially have a couple of roles. One is I recently just joined a technology advisory firm called CXO Partners, and we help private equity companies to really modernize and sort of take their technology systems to the next level. But we also help, private equity-backed companies and middle market companies to really provide interim leadership when they need it. In addition to that, I lead a services company called Scient, and also a product company called Ellie, where we have a product that transforms customer service and the relationships that you handle with your customers.
So many things, man. How do you find time to manage them all?
So sleep is overrated, first of all.
Yeah.
But I'm having the best time of my life. I think that it's about prioritizing. It's about really, understanding, what is the priority for the week.
Yeah.
And then being able to sort of manage all those things accordingly. So
yeah. And to get to where you are today, what are the most important experiences or skills that you've acquired along the way? Yeah.
So one of them is patience.
Yeah.
In every sense of the world.
Yeah.
I tend to be that was not one of my qualities. Let's say I tend to be not so patient.
Yeah.
But over the years, patience has allowed me to understand that everything has its timing, and I've been able to be fortunate enough to get better at that over the years. The other thing is probably tenacity. There's been, I've been faced with a number of hurdles over the years, from a career perspective, or sometimes from running a business perspective. But resiliency and tenacity is what sort of, has kept me going. And I would say, having a strong family, value and network, has allowed me to also continue doing the things that I want to do.
And then on the technical side, so you have a technical background, right?
I do, yeah.
Learn how to code and things like that.
I started coding. I have a degree in aerospace engineering and mechanical engineering, but I started coding since I was, early days. But then I fell in love with project management. And coordinating things and seeing things through and making things happen. And my IT career took off from there.
Nice. Yeah. What are the most a proud project, something that's out there or something that you've contributed to, that you're proud to say, oh, I worked on something like this?
Yeah, so most recently, actually, we just wrapped up this project. I've been working with the Department of Human and Health Services.
Yep.
And we've been working they have an office called the Administration of Children and Families,
Okay.
which manage all the childcare that happens around the country, including its different territories and tribes. And so I was helping lead the construction of a new national center to really transform the way that they think about digital, right, and how to modernize their IT and data systems.
Yeah.
And this project is in phases. So I was responsible for leading this for one of our customers, and it's been probably one of the most rewarding things that I've done.
Yeah.
You think about at the end of the day, what you do, hopefully it matters.
Yeah.
And there's nothing like seeing when you can help a child sort of achieve the things that they didn't think it would be possible.
For sure. How many people do you think something like this impacted or will impact in the future?
Yeah. So it could impact millions of people,
Yeah.
right? It could impact millions, but in the first year we've touched, we were fortunate enough to touch every state in the country in a very positive way, in educating them, in training them, in helping them understand what is it that they have and what status is their technology, and then being able to then hopefully in the future be able to sort of help them close the gap, right? Close that divide that exists between where they need to be and where they're at today.
Yeah. How do you find, or how do you decide what problem to focus next? Like what drives you, I guess? What's your motivation to get into anything that you work on?
Yeah. I'm probably one of the most creative persons that you'll find. I actually dedicate time in the morning and the afternoon of my days just to block time to think and be creative. And so creativity is my passion. In fact, I just came back from a meeting with a potential customer, and right there on the spot, we were brainstorming around things that were possible. And this customer was fairly impressed with what was coming out of my mouth. Yeah. And so that's one thing that really drives me is the ability to create, to solve problems, because sort of my brain doesn't stop working.
How do you ideate? Like, what's your process? Let's say you blocked off, let's say, an hour or two of your time. What's your process of coming up with new ideas?
Yeah. So the first thing that I do during that first hour in the morning is I read. And try to catch up with everything that's been going on. When we talk about AI, I mean, this thing is moving so fast, right? It's like a bullet train going at 400 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And so the first thing I do is I read and I catch up. And the afternoon is I think about the problems that I'm facing, whether it's potentially for a customer or potentially for anything, it could be even some issues that I need to solve for my own personal life.
Yep.
And I think about what are the things that I learned in the morning, and then how do I apply them to some of those things. And so so that's kind of my thing.
Do you write them down, or how do you? Yeah.
I have a log of all the things every day, of the things that I've thought about, concepts that I need to try. And then the afternoon is about how do I apply them.
Okay. And you write them down with just a pen and paper, typing them? What's your
I usually capture in a computer. Yeah.
On the computer. Yeah. Have you done like voice capture, voice notes?
Now in the last 3 days, I was joking with someone today that the live agent, the live voice in GPT has become my best friend.
Yeah, so I've created my own little automation for voice journaling where I usually go on walks, and when new ideas come, I just verbalize them. So I have this app that's running on the background. It's only recording when I'm talking. It's pausing when I'm not talking. And at the same time, it's playing some binaural beat sounds to put me in the present state, just to not be too distracted. And then when I get home, all of this gets transcribed, run through a custom prompt that I've developed, and it sends me a structured email with everything that I've talked about, adds additional maybe areas to look into. And so it's an immediate way for me to reflect and see, because oftentimes when those thoughts are very fleeting, and if you don't capture them in a proper way, they kind of just leave you. And so I was trying to figure out what's the easiest way to, as the idea just originated in my head, even the process of sometimes pulling your notebook and writing it down already dissipates a lot of that thought. And so I was like, how do I minimize any kind of dissipation of those new ideas that come through? And I thought like voice is the fastest way to just like verbalize them without even structuring what I'm saying, just like as do my best at like describing those thoughts. And so part of that automation is also creating a database of ideas that I've come across, with like putting a date, the idea itself, plus the transcript of everything that I actually said, and then some tags. I haven't really done anything with the database itself. Maybe in the future it's more about like on the long term horizon, look at the idea patterns, or like any kind of like maybe even map it into like idea space map that I can navigate.
A mind map.
Yeah, like a mind map. It would be cool to imagine you're talking to a person and you have a reference of your mind map of all of the ideas that you're familiar with, that you've heard about, that came through your consciousness. And you, as you're talking to someone and you're discussing a new concept, in real time, you see a new branch is being grown in your mind map, and you could see, oh, this idea is now related to something else. So you can like visually navigate the idea space. That was kind of my idea of like building this whole database.
Very cool. Very cool. I know Mural which is a popular product for doing some of those things.
Right.
We're an investor in Mural, and I know we were chatting with them the other day, and they're doing some very interesting things in that space as well. So
cool. You familiar with like the latest product that they're working on? Or
yes, so they were debriefing us on some of the latest advancements that they were working on. That
something related to like a note taking, idea capturing, and visualizing.
More in the mind mapping side.
And visualization and stuff. I'm all about figuring out how to use technology in enhancing our ability of being humans, bringing us more into the present, expanding consciousness, expanding awareness, knowledge, all of those things. Like how to expand the capability of your mind, of your brain. Memory is a big one. Like how do I remember more? Like since I was a kid, remembering was hard for me. Like somehow I would forget a lot of different details of the things, and so I think AI is here to now like solve a lot of these problems.
And that's going to be one of the phenomenal things, again, that I was talking to with this customer earlier this morning, is around how do you make AI more human, right?
Yeah.
And in every way possible, right? And so that was a fascinating conversation, because I think there's a lot of people that don't trust or fear AI.
Mm-hmm.
But it's exactly what happens with every phase and every sort of, inflection point in technology, I guess. You fear it at first, but then it becomes your inseparable best friend.
Yeah. And at the same time, there are a big number of people who are saying this time it's different, right? What do you say to that?
Well, do you remember the BlackBerry?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you remember what happened to the BlackBerry when the iPhone came on, right? I remember it took 5 years before my mother, and she was already on the older side, to get used to the new phone, right? Because essentially she went from the flip phone, she skipped a generation and went directly to that. Mm-hmm. So it's the same analogy. I guess what I'm saying is that for them, it took a little bit of time to get used to a new paradigm, right? Which was the iPhone.
Yep.
But then they they couldn't put it away anymore because they learned how much powerful that is. So I think I'm more of a believer that that depending on the inflection point, right? I think that sometimes there is no going back, and then later you say, "Yep, you know, I was wrong. I should have never feared this thing."
Yeah.
So I think I'm on that camp.
So you would consider yourself a strong optimist of technology and innovation? Yeah,
I am. And AI has been pushing me every day to balance my thoughts and opinions on how much of an optimist I need to be versus how conservative do I need to be in that respect. It's been probably the only technology ever that has pushed my belief system to kind of just take a look at it again and figure out do you need to continue being this optimist, or do you need a dose of realism as well? So,
and what kind of thoughts would kind of bring you back to say, oh, I need to be more realistic because X, Y, and Z things could go sideways? What are some of those sideways ideas that maybe went through your mind?
Yeah. So I think the thing with AI, a lot of people still don't understand the real implications of what would really happen if this thing goes bad, right?
Yeah.
If something bad ends up occurring. And with most technology, right, it's kind of that approach. People trust that others will take care of this stuff, right? And that people are, that pilots are flying safely those planes, and the doctors are being safe when they're conducting an operation. And so the same thing applies to AI, is that a lot of that sort of blind trust exists, thinking, well, somebody will figure it out. I don't have to worry about it. The difference is that AI, unlike any other technology that's existed before, if there's not, yes, the word that nobody likes, regulation, comes into place of some sort, and safety and responsibility comes in and sort of gets amalgamated together, then there's going to be problems. And then those that trusted others to watch over them are going to be disappointed.
Yeah, it feels sometimes that no one is in charge of the process that's unraveling. And maybe it is by design. In fact, if you look at the process of evolution, I think since day one, no one was really in charge. It was just like a self-evolving. Yes, you can believe that there is, I do believe that there is a higher force, a God of some sort, but I don't think that force has intentionally creates everything that happens. It's more like directionally, maybe. But in general, I think it's a self-evolving process that's just maybe being guided by certain sets of principles, and I don't know, like directionally there is an underlying force, but I don't know. What do you think about that?
So I tend to be on the other side. I think I'm fairly spiritual, and so I have a lot of friends that have been or are in the healthcare field, and the more that you talk to folks like that, you understand how complex even your body is, right?
Yeah.
And so I've always thought and challenged myself to say, can evolution have done this to our bodies, and the perfection on the body? There is no other machine that man has ever invented that is that perfect, right? Now it becomes imperfect because we don't take care of that machine.
Yeah.
In whatever way. So I question whether that higher power or was stronger or had more influence than evolution did. And so I probably come at it from that angle.
Yeah, because I see that what evolution is doing is finding the least amount of energy and time and effort to achieve whatever desirable goal. And that's tends to be the even there's beauty in that. Like a very efficient system has eloquent beauty how it was designed, just because it's so simple and at the same time it's so functional and complex, you know. And that's what evolution is doing every stage, every new step that it's developing.
But I tell you what, using the analogy that you just gave me, I think that evolution, in the case of where we were talking about AI, it is going to be survival of the fittest, though.
Yeah.
Right. And the strongest will win, and the weaker ones will disappear. And that's part of a big discussion. I'm sure your viewers and other folks that you've had in the panel have talked already about this, but who really controls this thing is going to be a predominant factor in terms of figuring out where do we end up. And today it's in the hands of the biggest tech companies, right? And we need to figure out whether that's the right path or not.
I mean, we briefly started talking about this, the closed source versus open source. Yeah. What do you see for, let's say, for AI as a more probable future outcome?
So the very first thing that I think needs to happen is that we need to operate and act in a very accelerated manner in everything that we do about AI. Many people talk about digital transformation as that was another inflection point, right, for technology. But there were no consequences with it except for, okay, I'm going to lose some revenue, I may lose some customers, but then, I could recover. With AI is different because depending on what things happen, it could be, it could have an existential kind of threat to us as a society, right? And so I think that this time around, this thing is different, and I forgot what I forgot what
with the closed source, open source, and then you were saying
so that's the first thing. I think that we need to definitely then, if we know that for a fact, the second thing that we need to think about is how do we collaborate on a global level, right? It's not enough that the U.S. gets it right. The whole world needs to get it right. Right. And so open source is one of the best conduits to do that. Right. And there's, I've been a big proponent of open source for the last 20 years of my career. I've contributed to, several open source projects. And I could tell you that if AI doesn't end up somewhere there, I think it's going to be a steep, a steep set of situations that are going to happen unless some of that occurs. So I hope that we end up going there. I mean, DeepSeek already, has helped in that process, right?
Yeah. I also have hopes for open source AI system that's serving everyone. It is fully transparent. Maybe it runs on blockchain that you can't even kind of mess with it, and it's serving so everyone gets a chance to also contribute to it and have an ownership of it. And it's this system that serves humanity. It's representing its best interests.
It's the concept of a DAO, basically. Yeah,
exactly. So I wanted to touch on your article that you wrote in 2017 about Smart City of 2025. Can you kind of give a short summary for the listeners so they understand what this is about, and then we can dive into a little bit more.
Sure. Happy to do that. So the same year that I wrote the article, and I tell you, I feel old every time I think about how long it's been, but so eight years ago or so, I was working with a project to try to build the very first smart ring, the very first piece of jewelry that was going to be smart, and it was called the Magic Ring. And we were building this in Asia for one of the largest CPG global companies in the world. And when we were doing this, this had to have the latest and greatest of IoT involved in that. And so, I had
like the smallest sensors, the small form factor is what makes it like the most advanced, basically.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I mean, imagine 8 years ago,
Yeah.
none of that. It was like you could just pick it up and
not off the shelf.
Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so what that happened is that he led me to travel, to cities like Seoul and Singapore and Dubai and I got to see what other countries are doing with respect to, for example, clean energy and keeping their cities much more efficient in their use of electricity, on their own resources. You see what Dubai does with their buildings, for example, right? And it got me thinking, Miami is the perfect place where if you're going to try things like this anywhere, this would be the perfect place where to do that. Because, we have a traffic problem. It's always been here. And it's only getting worse. We have I don't know if you've been driving on 95 or on the Palmetto Parkway, but you'll see that the pollution here is everywhere. And for example, in New York, you have laws that where every year cars are supposed to be inspected. And if you're polluting the environment, they won't let you drive your car, right? You have to pay to fix it. So here in Florida, we don't have that.
Yeah.
But just when you think about, things like that in climate change and other things that are going on, I was thinking there's got to be something that we can do to effectively do that, right? And I know the city's been trying to do some things around traffic lights, and the airport has been looking at, trying to automate some things. But there's really nothing being concerted to try to really think about in a strategic fashion and in an organized way to bring government, academia, corporations, and to try to fix this problem of why is it that we don't have smart city here in Miami? Transportation, huge problem in Miami, right? Public transportation is almost non-existent. I grew up in New York, so probably some of the best transportation in the entire U.S. From a public standpoint. We can have that too. I mean, we have Brightline, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. And I think smart city concept could bring so much to it. And it's a shame that it hasn't happened yet.
Paint me a vision of as far as you can see, an ideal city of the future. What does that look like? Any aspect that you want to talk about?
Yeah. So I think that I'm a big proponent of, cleaner uses of cleaner energy, of, conservation of energy, and IoT and smart cities to do those things, to regulate waste, could be tremendous. So that's one thing where we live and we can breathe cleaner air, less pollution, where, we're saving energy, right? Everybody's talking about daylight savings time and whether we really need to stay on that or not. There's other ways to save energy. I'm also in terms of we need to be more efficient with our times, right? And, smart city could do that for us, whether it is even from, where you park and how you park to, I don't know if you've been to Miami Airport lately, but even though they have all those signs, why couldn't you just look at your phone and reserve ahead of time, and it tells you when something is free and automatically does it for you because it senses that there's no one there. So that convenience factor that at a city that is smart, so it's not just about convenience, but it's also quality of living, right?
Do you see future cities being as big as New York's and London's of the world, or because now with the remote work and people not needing to be in physical proximity to their coworkers to still do meaningful work, how do you see from that perspective?
Well, so you've probably seen the debate of now return to office, right? It's this huge debate in the U.S. not sure if it's a global debate, but certainly in the US is huge. And a lot of people have been fighting it, resisting it, because during COVID, they got so used to doing that. So, so I would have said that 3 years ago, I would have agreed that it didn't matter where you lived, because you could basically just commute. And so the concept of, Hyperloop, I don't know if you remember that, or any transportation like that can get you from point A to point C in small, amount of time. That made sense. But now that they're asking you to go back to work, or if you're not close to one of those cities, you lose your job. I think we're going back in time. And so I still think that people are going to have to think about whether their plans about living anywhere are really practical, especially if you work for some of the larger corporations. Right? Some are still being smart and saying, we need to be remote first, and because it's okay, we can still thrive that way. But I think it's going to be a process of evolution, from that perspective. Let's see where that takes us. But I think that the smartness of a city can apply to any city, whether it's small or large. I think that there's an opportunity to trial, right? And you try to do this in a smaller city,
right?
And then take that concept and blow it up in a larger city.
Yeah, in terms of remote work, COVID forced us to be fully remote, and that was like the pendulum swing all the way to basically to the future. But then we opened back after COVID, and then it started swinging back a little bit. So I think it will eventually move towards the state in which we have to rely less and less on physical proximity to other humans to do meaningful work. We will still, I hope, will need physical proximity for deep human connection and meaning and like do human things. But in terms of productivity, in terms of being able to collaborate and work together, maybe with the emergence of more advanced tools for immersive experiences like the Meta or
Metaverse.
Apple Vision Pro or something like that. I'm sure we'll get to the point where it's just a small pair of glasses with the full 3D rendering of the environment. So as if you're at home, but now you can be in the office, and it's a very meaningful interaction. It's not just like a low quality, low fidelity Zoom session. This is much more immersive, and at that point, I don't see any other reasons for you to be next to each other for doing like meaningful, productive work like that.
Yeah, I think it's a cultural thing that leadership and some of the companies that are forcing their employees back to the offices, they just need to understand that you can still have productivity, you can still have a lot of progress, you can still not have to enforce the fact that people need to be there, but sort of foster in another way. And I agree with you. I think that whether it is, augmented reality or virtual reality or any other technologies that will approximate that stuff, I happen to be on the camp that, being remote, I am more productive than I am sometimes being at the office.
Yeah.
And I know not everybody's like that, and everybody's situation is different. So it should be offered as an option, but not mandated.
For sure.
And that's my opinion on how that should work. But I agree with you. I think that the technology is there to make all those things happen that you just talked about.
Yeah.
I think, Apple and Meta, hopefully can get to a form factor where the stuff is actually usable.
Yeah.
So, I've tried so many of those things.
I have too. Yeah. They're still not there. Yeah.
Still not there. But
this is just to kind of peek into the future, just to get the glance of it. But yeah, it's still very bulky. It's still not practical to sit for 8 hours. I think something like it should be as simple as AirPods or even, I mean, wireless, wired headphones. We can wear them all day long and we're not getting tired of it. So we got to create some kind of way visually engage with the digital environment in which we're not getting tired after like 8 hours of interaction with it. At that point, that will be just, everyone will be using it, you know?
Or it could be a pair of glasses, right? A regular pair of glasses, which everybody, whether you need prescriptions or not, that's a different story. But, you know, I've always said that the beauty about technology is not real magic until it becomes invisible.
Mm-hmm.
And so once that's invisible, I mean, I don't know, have you seen the new Ray-Bans that, you know, the Meta put out? I mean, it's a right step. Now, Google had something similar, you know, 9 years ago. But the technology was too early for its time, you know.
What were those called? I forget.
Well, at
Google Glass? Google Glass?
Google Glass, and the people that weren't, remember what they were called?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was a little too early. What do you think is going to be the difference between a fully simulated virtual experience where your senses are not able to tell the difference? It's so crisp, like you don't see any pixels, you don't see any lag, it's all like perfectly rendered. Compare that to a real experience. Let's assume, let's an example of interacting with another human. So imagine it's like kind of like this fancy Zoom experience, teleconferencing experience where there's no lag, perfect clear, and your senses can tell the difference. Do you think we'll notice anything different between a real person experience and a fully simulated one? Like
yeah, absolutely. I think that we're probably more than 20 years out or something like that to be able to close the gap on even something like that, right?
Mm.
But I think that the thing is that first of all, we can't think about 100% replacement of something. We need to think about in practical percentages, like does that alternate technology get me to 80% so I can do my job?
Yeah.
Right. And if the answer is yes, then that's good enough.
Right.
You know, I think then the other component that comes in is the fact that nothing is going to replace me going out and hanging out with a few buddies and drinking a beer.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want to be doing that in a virtual world.
Right.
I don't know if you remember that became very popular during COVID, which was, you know, virtual drinking parties. Right. Was that fun? I don't know. I actually never did one, but
it was probably more fun than not doing it, though. For those who drink and who do that, you know what I mean? Yeah, it was good enough for with the circumstances that they had. Yeah,
no, and it was a way to also get distracted from the monotony that's going on, right? Of being in your pajamas the whole day.
You know, I thought about this idea of having a smart mirror that kind of like this. So we're looking at each other through a big mirror, and it's a double-sided mirror. So envision that now it's a big screen behind it, and behind of it is also a camera that maybe even has like an ability to move around. So when you move around the room, you can, instead of just one large sensor that's capturing the entire thing, it could like move around and capture what's most important is where you're looking, where your head position is, and so you can in real time render. So the mirror becomes basically a window into the digital world, and then you can basically create, let's say, this kind of experience what we're currently having with that type of tech, that if it really feels like you're there, even, you know. Yeah.
Do you remember the Kinect from Microsoft? They tried to do something like that. And for some reason, Microsoft is not very lucky with consumer products, but unfortunately, the technology went away. But the concept was there to do sort of those types of things, and Kinect behind the scenes had a lot of the technology, but unfortunately, just like what happened with HoloLens. I mean, you heard, right? Microsoft is getting out of that business, so the hardware business, unfortunately, because I thought it was a good product. You know, I worked for Microsoft for some period of time, and so I could tell you I had the chance to experience that, and you know, So right now it's Apple and Meta left,
That's
and
right.
a couple of the other participants, but yeah, those are the big.
Yeah, the hardware business is a really hard to monitor. It's like a 10-15 year investment and billions of dollars to then capitalize on it.
And if anybody's good at that, it's Apple, right?
They are, yeah. Smart. So you mentioned this thing is like the magic or something about
The magic ring.
Something about technology becomes a magic when it's not noticeable.
That's right.
I have the same idea of as the most advanced technology is the one that's least noticeable.
Yeah.
It's somewhere in the background. It's like very small. And so I see the future in which, so let's say if we have this ability now to look into the future and see how humans interact, how they behave, we will see no gadgets, we will see no technology. It's just humans living in a more like semi-primitive lifestyle, integrated in nature, integrated in just what we currently see like normal homes and things. But in the back of their mind, their basically menus, their interaction with digital media, there's another layer of abstraction that they can interact with, but their physical body is getting exactly what it was designed to do. Our physical body, for example, is not designed to sit at the computer for 8 hours and look at a flat screen or something like that.
Yeah, so I agree with that. I do. When people ask me about this topic, I tell them that speech really wasn't a thing until very recently. Mm-hmm. Now, people have been investigating about speech for the last 50 years.
Yeah.
On how do you make that as an interface, but it hasn't really become doable until the advent of AI. Frankly,
mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know when was the last time you tried to use Siri or anything like that, but isn't it the most frustrating thing ever?
Super,
right?
Yeah.
And so now that speech is sort of a real thing and it functions well, mm-hmm. that's going to be the next interface for the next probably 10 years or so, mm-hmm. maybe less. But then, so speech I would consider invisible because it's just part of what you do as a human being without, touching anything or looking at anything. Mm-hmm. But I think eventually migrates to what you're saying, right? Mm-hmm. To, now brain-powered things.
Yeah, like a telepathy type.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And so now, a lot of people talk about augmentation, right? We augmenting ourselves in order to keep up with what's going on with AI.
Yep.
And so if those brave souls that choose to go that route, mm-hmm. Will have other, brain type capabilities that mm-hmm. Right now, we're not even capable of dreaming about.
Right.
And those will definitely be just about telepathy and just thinking about imagining things, and they'll become real.
Yeah, I think Neuralink recently patented or like trademarked the word telepathy or something like that.
I didn't read about that, but I know that they've been, at least that they were trying to do that. I didn't know if they were able to trademark it, but
yeah, I've read. I haven't gone into like the details. Whoever is hearing or watching this, please put in the comments if you look it up and see what is there. But it's definitely coming. So I like this other pattern of evolution, specifically interaction with technology. So looking at the phones, so the most primitive phones were these bricks, very heavy, and it was a very physical experience interacting with the technology, right? And as it was evolving, it was becoming lighter and it was easier to press the buttons and it was easier to interact with it. And now we're at the point where it's a very light tap into it, and then now we're starting to interact with the voice. So it's becoming more subtle and more subtle ways of interacting. In fact, not just with technology, but with the world. We interact with the world through our tools, through technology. We used to, do all of the things as like a physical activity, let's say farming, but it was tools in between the real world and us, but they were physical tools. And over time, those tools are making our efforts less and less. And now we can just interact with the world with just tapping and speaking.
Right.
And at some point it will be like, we don't have to even, we just think it's the least effort basically to be able to move rocks, like with our tools that understands, that can read our mind, and that can convert the intentionality into action.
Yeah. I think that there's a human reaction, and a resistance to get away from stuff that you cannot touch and feel, right? So if you remember what happened with books, for example, for a long time, and it still happens, right? A lot of people will tell you, I'd rather just pick up a book and actually read it because I cannot consume it if I read it. Remember the Kindle and some of the early days of that. And I haven't picked up a physical book to read probably in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Now I may be an early adopter, right? And so therefore for me, it's easier to do that. But, the other day, my dad is 93 years old. And the other day I was chatting with him about, he hates picking up a book and reading it. Now he's reading in his iPhone.
Okay.
Imagine how far we've come for a 93-year-old to give me that as an answer. 5 years ago, maybe even, I wouldn't have gotten that answer from other folks. And so we're advancing that whole notion of having to need to touch things.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying that, speech is going to become a very natural interface. That is the next natural interface. And so therefore you don't need your phone, right? You could just carry your phone, but you don't need to take it out necessarily.
Right. Yeah. And with AI being able to basically generate digital experiences on the fly, instead of us using an app, we will be able to talk to an agent that can just show you a UI that was built on the fly to do whatever you needed to do at that specific moment.
Right. Yep.
That's kind of cool. So you're also touched on efficiency, and I had this thought. Over centuries, we've been optimizing our efforts on how can we make something more efficient, and that's what would bring us more meaning, I guess, in life. But now we're creating these powerful tools that take the efficiency to a completely different scale, compare it to human efficiency, how cognitive efficiency and things like that. Don't you think we'll get to the point where efficiency is not going to be the thing that we're optimizing for when talking about humans? Because it's going to be just irrelevant. Like, if we have a machine that's 100 times more efficient, how's that important if you're efficient like double that somebody else is? Like it's not going to be as relevant, human efficiency.
Yeah, I think we're gonna eventually, probably not too far away, maybe in the next 10 years, we're gonna get to a point of efficiency is gonna hit that point of diminishing returns, right? And some other concept is gonna take on. But I agree with you. I think that, and I say 10 years because that's where I think probably we get to start seeing things around AGI, right? And then there's another 10 to 15 years for kind of that next phase of, superhuman intelligence now. Yeah. And so at least I would say in the next 10 years, we're still going to be talking about it.
Yeah.
But maybe after that, not so much.
What do you think there will be left for humans to do at that point?
They're going to chill and relax and have a good time. Unless something drastic occurs, right? And then we're talking about, and this is what, right, the biggest misconception that people have is that, today we're watching the Terminator on their television sets, right? And so we're not there yet. Hopefully we never get to that. But if everything goes well, I think that things are going to go in a very positive way in terms of, people getting to a level of enjoying life much more, convenience, concepts that they've never been able to experience before. People talk about all the time about work-life balance. Yeah. There is no such a thing as work-life balance, right? It's because the minute you try to balance something gets compromised. So I think it's going to be about being able to do the things that you want to do, right? Because you're going to have a lot more time. And so that's in a very optimistic world, right? And so we're going to take on more tasks that are more creative in nature, perhaps, right?
Yeah, I see us leaning more into our innate human ability that is spiritually grounded, more human, also human to human, deeper connection, communal experiences, something that gives us meaning outside of work. Like oftentimes people find meaning in their work because they see impact through work. But then if there's like if machine or like robots and AI does all of the external impact on the world, we have to find it somewhere else. And I also see technology or so what we thought is innately human has been done changing over time. Like we thought, oh, humans can't be creative, for example. That goes out of the window now, like with all of I mean, whatever you define as creativity though,
Right.
but over time it's been like peeling off the onion of what it means to be a human. Like, oh, humans can, do logical thinking or this or that, but then we're finding ways how to do that without humans, like with our machines, and we're getting closer and closer to the essence of what it means to be human, and it is, I think, a non-physical thing. Like it has to do with the spirit. It has to do with this magical moment of coming alive, like some the spark of consciousness coming into this world. And I think we will find out more about that the more we strip away what we thought the human is.
Yeah, I agree. And then that begs the question also, and then will that same thing happen to the intersection of AI and robotics, right? To those that, will they reach that point that's a spark moment where, they take on so many human characteristics that there is no turning back. And when does that occur? So I think about that all the time is, you tend to be a futurist in nature, right? I think, and so, I love Ray Kurzweil
as well. Yeah.
And so if you read his stuff, he talks a lot about kind of reaching that moment of singularity, right? Now, whether that's, it's probably not going to be 2029, but whether that's 2039 or 59, it doesn't matter. But it is that moment where I think we also need to look at it from the other point of view. I think there's going to be a moment like that for humans, but there's also going to be a moment for those beings that are going to be around us, hopefully for a long time.
Do you think we'll get to the point where we don't need our bodies to exist?
I think that the way I think about it, and it goes back to some of the things that actually Ray Kurzweil talks about, is about the fact that our souls, our memories will live on, right? And so I come at it from that perspective. I think that in this future world, there will be certainly less diseases. We may not be ever disease free, but hopefully all the major things have been, we found a cure for those things. And so I think that we're going to have, I expect us to have much healthier bodies, right? And be more conscious about how to take care of of our own bodies. But so I don't know if we will not need our bodies, but what I do know is that, because there's already trials of some of that being done today, of how to preserve those that have gone now, and those will become, just as we're talking, I will have the capability of bringing back a relative that I so love, or your parents. Maybe that will be an opportunity to do that.
Yeah. man, the future is wild. Like if you start like really thinking, okay, if we already have something like this today, like in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, that's going to be, yeah, it's going to be very different. Yeah. The rate of change is going to be, so I'm reading this book. It's called, something about, what's it called? Something about a shock from the rate of change that our brain is not capable of. At some point, I think we're already getting like very close to the point where just too much happening that you can't keep up anymore, and we need to find new ways how to interpret what's happening around us. It's almost maybe as if there's always so much happening around us if we know how to look. Like even at an atomic scale, there's just infinitely amount of complexity that happens around us, and maybe now is just coming onto the surface. It's a different level of abstraction on which there's so much happening, but we haven't yet learned how to navigate that. Like,
and this is where there's two things that are coming together, and I love the concept of those things coming together. So one of them is AI and brain-computer interfaces, because I think that it's inevitable that we will be augmented in some way. Not everything needs to be augmented in your brain. It could be augmented in other ways. But so that's the physical part of helping us keep up with this overload of things that are happening, right? Because you're right. I think, maybe our brain was designed to continue, and some say that we only use a very small portion of our brain capacity and capabilities. So we may still have some ways to go, but at some point we're going to need to augment ourselves. Yeah. Because the rate of change is going to surpass what perhaps we're capable of. But then the component of AI comes in on the fact that, the other day, somebody asked me to explain it for a fifth grader. What is AI? And I just said, it's like if you had a personal assistant, and that assistant never gets sick. Yeah. Always in a good mood. Yeah. And it's it's just a phone call away. Yeah. And so the ability to have always a lifeline of some sort. Yeah. To help you with a particular thing, with anything that you want, right? And that augmentation, right? The compound effect of those two things as you put them together will allow you to continue coping for much longer, right?
Yeah. We shall see what the future unfolds. I know that it's close to impossible to predict the actual what's actually going to happen. We have ideas and beliefs of just drawing a line between point A and point B, but we never know what's going to happen in between. Maybe aliens come and this whole thing change. I don't know, like anything could happen, really, Yeah. And I think but
they'll come to New York first, though. Yeah. They always.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Anyway, maybe this is a good place for us to kind of start wrapping up. Is there anything else that you would like to mention or point out, or let people point in a particular direction to look up to, like, I don't know, any resources?
Yeah, so I would say that, AI is here. Yeah. It's not about the future. It's here now. I would say that companies, whether you're a small company, whether you're in, a middle market company, or whether you're a large company, you need to take this stuff seriously. Many companies are not prepared to take this on. And so therefore they need to do things like AI readiness studies. They need to develop strategies that are holistic in nature. They need to understand what are the things that they're able to do now versus later. They need to understand what are the right use cases, how they apply this thing, maybe, internally first and then externally out. But they need to start. They need to start somewhere. And they may not have the help in order to sort of get there, but they need to get the help. If they don't have the internal capacity of expertise, I could help them, and my company can help them with those things. As I mentioned earlier, the rate of change is so fast that those that don't really take advantage of making those changes that they need to do from a company perspective, from the labor force perspective, they're going to be left behind, and it's going to feel a lot worse than probably what it felt, like I said, in the last inflection point, which was about digital transformation. Some companies haven't even started transforming themselves digitally, so they're 2 generations behind. And there's going to be a lot of businesses that may not be here, a few years from now, if they don't try to do something now. So this is not a fad. It's not going away. It's here to stay.
Beautiful. All right. Thank you, Alejandro, for being a guest, and thank you for listeners for sticking out all the way till the end, at least for those who have. And I will see you on the next one.